The vial slipped from her trembling fingers, shattering against the porcelain sink like a fragile vow broken in the dead of night. Esther's heart slammed against her ribs as the acrid liquid splashed across her lips, burning down her throat before she could spit it out. Her roommate's experimental chemistry project, unlabeled and forgotten on the bathroom counter. "What have I done?" she whispered to her reflection, but the mirror only stared back, unblinking, as the first wave of heat uncoiled in her veins, pulling truths from the shadows she'd buried deeper than her grandmother's secrets in the attic of the old Monroe plantation house. In the humid haze of that Louisiana summer, where Spanish moss draped like funeral veils over live oaks, Esther had always worn her smile like armor, polished, unyielding, the kind that charmed church ladies at Sunday potlucks and deflected her father's stern glances over dinner. She was the dutiful daughter of Harlan Whitaker, a man whose cotton fields stretched like accusations across the bayou, his legacy a tangle of Confederate ghosts and unyielding expectations. At 28, Esther managed the family's ledger in town, her days a rhythm of ledgers and lace doilies, her nights haunted by the what-ifs that bloomed in the dark. But tonight, as the serum coursed through her, those what-ifs sharpened into knives, ready to carve open the life she'd stitched together with careful lies. Lila Beaumont had moved into the cramped shotgun house on Cypress Lane 6 months earlier, a transplant from the rainy edges of Portland, Oregon, with her duffel bag of half-read poetry books and a chemistry set that smelled faintly of regret. She was 26, sharp-tongued and unapologetic, her laugh a spark that lit up the dim rooms like fireflies in July. They'd met at the local diner, Esther nursing black coffee after a long shift, Lila sketching formulas on a napkin between bites of gumbo. "You're too pretty to look so sad," Lila had said, sliding into the booth uninvited, and just like that, the air between them thickened with possibility, the kind Esther had only dared to dream about in stolen moments, curled under quilts that still carried the scent of her mother's lavender sachets. From the outside, their roommate arrangement was the picture of Southern practicality. 2 women sharing rent in a town where single folks were pitted or preached at, Lila's freelance lab gigs funding her escape from a string of bad decisions back west, Esther's steady checks keeping the lights on. But beneath the surface it was a slow-burning fuse. Lila's casual touches, a hand brushing Esther's arm while passing the salt, the way her eyes lingered during late-night talks on the sagging porch, stirred something feral in Esther, a hunger she'd named and renamed in the privacy of her journal, pages filled with ink that bled like confessions. She loved Lila, or at least the version of love that society allowed in whispers. Admiration, friendship, the safe harbor of shared silence. But the truth, the one she'd locked away with her mother's old pearl necklace, was fiercer. A pull toward Lila's body, her mind, the way she challenged the invisible fences of Monroe like they were made of smoke. The serum hit like a confession booth with no priest. Esther stumbled from the bathroom, her bare feet cold against the warped pine floors, the hallway clock ticking like a heartbeat too loud. She collapsed onto the edge of the kitchen table, gripping the wood until her knuckles whitened, as fragments of her hidden world bubbled up unbidden. "I can't stop it," she gasped, her voice a ragged thread in the quiet house. The first truth slipped out soft as a prayer. "I lied to Daddy about the church auction. I didn't bid on that antique quilt because it reminded me of her, of Mama, and how she died pretending everything was fine. But that was just the surface, the small betrayal that had festered since her mother's quiet passing 5 years back, Harlan's grief turning to granite resolve, demanding Esther carry the family name like a cross." Lila found her there, silhouetted against the moon-pale curtains, a half-eaten peach forgotten on her plate from their interrupted dinner. "Esther? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lila's voice was laced with concern, her dark hair falling loose from its ponytail as she knelt beside her, one hand hovering just shy of touch. In that moment, with the serum's fire licking at her tongue, Esther's gaze locked on Lila's, the curve of her jaw, the faint scar above her eyebrow from a childhood fall, and the dam cracked. "I see you," Esther blurted, the words tumbling like stones down a well. "Every night when you're asleep in the next room, I imagine what it would be like to cross that threshold. Not as friends. More." The air stilled, heavy with the scent of magnolias drifting through the screen door. Lila's eyes widened, not in shock but in the slow dawn of recognition, as if she'd been waiting for this map to unfurl. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers brushed Esther's knee, tentative as a question. Esther, what are you talking about? That serum, God, did you drink from my vial? The one marked to 17? Lila's voice cracked on the edge of laughter and fear, scrambling to her feet to rummage through the fridge for water, but Esther's truths kept spilling, each one heavier than the last. I grew up in this town thinking love was a transaction, Esther said, her voice gaining strength from the poison in her blood. Daddy's fields, Mama's smiles, they were all about appearances. The Whitaker name means something here, Lila. It means pews in the front row at First Baptist. It means marrying some boy from the Rotary Club and popping out heirs to till the soil. But I never wanted that. I wanted. She trailed off, her chest heaving, the serum pulling deeper now, into the marrow of her secrets. Lila pressed a glass to her lips, cool water sluicing down, but it was too late. The elixir had woven its spell, turning restraint to revelation. As the clock chimed midnight, Esther's confessions wove a tapestry of the life she'd hidden. She spoke of the summer she was 16, stealing kisses with a girl named Corinne behind the cotton gin, their hands fumbling in the dark until whispers reached Harlan's ears. Corinne shipped off to boarding school in Atlanta. Esther whipped with Bible verses in silence. I learned to smile through it, she murmured, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. That quilt at the auction? Mama made it for me. Embroidered with wildflowers, she said, reminded her of freedom. But freedom's a lie here, Lila. It's a bird with clipped wings singing in a cage. Lila listened, her face a mask of quiet fury, the chemist in her calculating the serum's half-life even as her heart twisted. She'd come to Monroe chasing a grant for her research, but stayed for Esther, the woman who baked cornbread with secrets in every crumb, who quoted Faulkner on rainy afternoons but blushed at her own audacity. This isn't just the serum talking, Lila said softly, cupping Esther's face, thumbs brushing away salt. I've seen it in your eyes, the way you look at me like I'm the only real thing in this ghost town. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that point of contact. A promise unspoken, electric. But Monroe wasn't kind to promises like theirs. As dawn crept in, painting the kitchen gold, Esther's words slowed, the serum's grip loosening like a fever breaking. She slumped against Lila, exhaustion claiming her. But the truths hung in the air, irrevocable. Lila carried her to bed, tucking the quilt around her shoulders, the one with wildflowers faded but fierce. Sleep now, she whispered, lingering in the doorway. We'll figure this out. Together. Yet even as she said it, doubt flickered. Lila's own past was a graveyard of half-truths. An ex-lover in Oregon who'd called her too much before vanishing into the mist. Could she be the anchor Esther needed? Or would she drag them both under? The morning brought clarity and consequence. Esther woke to the smell of chicory coffee, her head throbbing like a distant storm. Lila was at the stove, flipping eggs with mechanical precision, her back a wall of unspoken questions. How much do you remember? Lila asked, sliding a plate across the Formica table, her voice steady but her eyes searching. Everything, Esther replied, the word a stone in her throat. She reached for the coffee, black and bitter, mirroring the churn in her gut. The serum's aftereffects lingered. A raw honesty that made small talk impossible. I didn't mean to unload like that. But it's out now. You know me. The parts one hid even from myself. Lila sat across from her, elbows on the table, fingers steepled like a scientist dissecting a specimen. It's not just the serum, Esther. It's you. And me. Last night. It felt real. She paused, glancing out the window where the bayou slumbered under a veil of fog. But this town, your family. It's not going to let that slide easy. Esther nodded, the weight of Harlan's expectations settling like humidity on her skin. Her father had built the Whitaker legacy on land soaked in history's blood, from the slaves who'd toiled under the same sun to the sharecroppers who'd fled during the floods. He saw Esther as his redemption, the daughter who'd marry well, preserve the name, keep the church elders nodding approval. He's planning a dinner next week, she said, voice flat. With the Hargrove boy. Thinks it's time I settled. As if my life's a ledger to balance. Lila's laugh was sharp, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Settled? With that stuffed shirt who quotes stock prices like scripture? You'd wither, Esther. And I'd lose you to that. The admission hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Lila had her own ghosts. A mother who disowned her for loving women. A father lost to the bottle before she could ask why. Chemistry was her refuge, formulas that didn't judge, reactions she could predict. But Esther was chaos, beautiful and terrifying. They spent the day in fragile truce, Lila brewing antidotes in her makeshift lab. A corner of the living room cluttered with beakers and Bunsen burners, while Esther pored over old letters in the attic, seeking solace in her mother's words. "Love isn't a debt," one note read, penned in a hand that trembled with unspoken pain. "It's the light you chase, even when the world's gone dark." Tears blurred the ink, and Esther wondered if Mama had chased it too, only to crash against the rocks of expectation. By evening the Serum's echo stirred again, softer this time like a whisper in the wind. They walked the levee as the sun dipped low, fireflies winking like conspirators. Lila's hand brushed Esther's and this time neither pulled away. "What if we ran?" Lila murmured, the bayou water lapping at their feet like temptation. "To Oregon. Or anywhere. Start over." Esther's heart soared then plummeted. "And leave what? Daddy's fields? The house Mama loved." But beneath the duty the longing pulsed for Lila's touch, for a life where smiles weren't shields. They kissed there under the cypress knees, tentative at first, then fierce, the world fading to the taste of salt and possibility. It was their first real claim, serum or no, and it tasted like rebellion. Word of their closeness spread like kudzu through Monroe's veins. Mrs. Thibodeau at the post office raised an eyebrow over the counter, her gossip a currency more valuable than stamps. "Saw those two Whitaker girls strolling too close by the water," she clucked to the bridge club, the tale twisting with each retelling. Harlan heard it from the deacon, his face darkening like thunderheads over the delta. He arrived unannounced that Sunday, his truck rumbling up Cypress Lane like Judgment Day. Esther met him on the porch, Lila hovering inside, out of sight but close enough to hear. "What's this I hear about you and that Yankee girl?" Harlan growled, his voice low thunder, calloused hands flexing as if gripping an invisible plow. "It's nothing, Daddy," Esther lied, the old habit die hard, but her eyes betrayed her, bright with the serum's lingering truth. "Lila's just a friend, helping with the books." Harlan's gaze pierced, the man who'd stared down boll weevils and bank foreclosures. "Friends don't walk like lovers, girl. This town's got eyes and I've got a name to protect. The Hargroves are expecting you Friday. Dress proper." End of discussion. He left with the slam of a door, the echo reverberating through Esther's bones. Inside, Lila waited, arms open, but Esther paced like a caged panther. "He knows," she said, voice breaking. "Not everything, but enough. And if he digs." The serum had cracked the facade. Now the world was prying it apart. That night, as rain lashed the tin roof, their lovemaking was a storm of its own, urgent, whispered, bodies mapping territories long denied. Lila's fingers traced the scars of old wounds, real and imagined, while Esther surrendered to the rhythm, the truth of her desire no longer a secret but a song. "I choose you," she breathed against Lila's skin, the words a vow against the howling wind. But vows in Monroe were fragile as Spanish moss. The next day brought the first crack. A letter from Corinne, forwarded from Atlanta, her words a ghost's lament. "Heard you're still there, trapped in that web. Run, Esther, before it chokes you like it did me." The paper trembled in her hands, memories flooding back. The stolen summer, the exile, the silence that followed like a shadow. Lila found her in the garden, weeds choking the roses Mama had planted. "We can't stay," Lila said, kneeling in the mud, her hands gentle on Esther's. "Your father's not the only one watching. The church ladies, the field hands, they talk. And when they do, it's not just words. It's stones." Esther looked up, rain mixing with tears on her face. "Where would we go? I'm all he's got left. The land, the name. It's poisoned us, but it's home." "Home's not a cage," Lila countered, fierce as the lightning cracking overhead. "It's this us. We build it wherever we land." The decision simmered through the week, a pot on low boil. Esther attended the Hargrove dinner in a daze, her smile a brittle mask, enduring small talk about yields and weddings while her mind wandered to Lila's laugh, the curve of her hip under moonlight. Thaddeus Hargrove droned on about futures, oblivious to the war raging in her chest. "You're quiet tonight," he noted, patting her hand like a possession. "Just tired," she murmured, pulling away. The Serum's ghost urging honesty she swallowed back. Outside under the stars she texted Lila. "I can't do this. Meet me at the levee." They met in the dark, the Mississippi murmuring secrets of its own. "I'm done pretending," Esther said, her voice steady for the first time. "Pack your things. We leave at dawn." Lila pulled her close, their kiss sealing the pact, but fate, that cruel Southern storyteller, had other plans. Harlan's truck idled in the shadows, his figure a silhouette of betrayal. He'd followed her, suspicion his compass. "Esther Whitaker," he bellowed, stepping into the light, shotgun loose in his grip. Not aimed but a threat all the same. "What in God's name are you doing?" The world tilted. Lila froze, Esther's hand slipping from hers. "Daddy, please. Get in the truck," he commanded, eyes blazing with the fire of generations scorned. "This Yankee witch has bewitched you. The serum, the talk, it's all clear now. You're coming home. Tonight." Lila stepped forward, chin lifted. "She doesn't belong to you, Mr. Whitaker. Not anymore." Harlan's laugh was bitter bark. "Belong? This is my blood, girl. My land. You think you can waltz in from the west and steal what's mine?" He turned to Esther, voice cracking like dry earth. "Choose, daughter. Me, your family, or this abomination." The serum's final whisper rose then, unbidden. "I choose me," Esther said, the words a thunderclap in the night. "For the first time I choose me." Harlan recoiled as if struck, the shotgun clattering to the ground. Rain poured harder, washing away the last veils. He staggered back to his truck, engine roaring to life, leaving them in the mud and moonlight. Betrayal hung thick, but in its wake a fragile freedom. They fled at first light, bags tossed in Lila's battered Corolla, Monroe shrinking in the rearview like a bad dream. The drive north was a blur of highways and heartbeats, Oregon's promise pulling like a tide. But the road wasn't empty of ghosts. Harlan's calls went unanswered, his voicemails a litany of pleas turning to curses. "You've shamed us," one ended, voice hollow. "But blood's thicker than lies." In a roadside motel outside Memphis, Esther broke, curling into Lila's arms as sobs racked her. "I betrayed him. After everything, Mama's death, the fields failing. He raised me alone and I." "You saved yourself," Lila whispered, holding tight. "That's no betrayal. It's birth." The tantrum came in waves. Letters from the church, disowning notes from cousins. The Whitaker land sold piecemeal to pay debts Harlan drowned in whiskey. Word reached them in Portland, where Lila's apartment overlooked the Willamette. Evergreens a balm to southern scars. Esther found work in a bookstore, shelves of stories that echoed her own. Women loving fiercely against the grain. But the nights were harder, dreams of bayous and Bible fire chasing her awake. One evening, as fog rolled in from the river, a knock shattered the quiet. Harlan stood on the stoop, thinner, eyes shadowed like the man who'd once hoed fields at dawn. No shotgun, just a worn envelope, Mama's quilt folded neat. "I came to see if you were still my daughter," he said, voice rough as gravel. Esther's throat closed, Lila's hand warm in hers behind the door. "I am," she replied. "But I'm more now." He nodded, slow, the weight of years cracking his resolve. "Your mama. She had secrets too. Loved a woman once before me. Kept it buried like you. It ate at her." He pressed the quilt into her arms. "Don't let it eat you." The door closed soft, but the world shifted. Harlan drove south alone, the fields waiting but lighter now, unburdened. Back inside, Esther unfolded the fabric, wildflowers blooming vivid under lamplight. "It's over," she said, not to Lila, but to the girl who'd smiled through storms. In the years that followed, they built a life. A small house with a garden of untamed roses, Lila's lab grants funding dreams, Esther's stories finding ink in local presses. Monroe faded to memory, a chapter closed, but its lessons lingered. Love as rebellion, truth as serum and salve. And in quiet moments tracing Lila's scars, Esther knew. The smile she wore now held no secrets, only light. The drive to Portland stretched like a confession, mile markers ticking off the distance from Monroe's chokehold. Esther gripped the wheel of Lila's Corolla, knuckles white against the faded leather, while Lila dozed in the passenger seat, her head lolled against the window, breath fogging the glass in soft rhythms. The radio hummed low, a country ballad about lost highways and lovers left behind, but Esther couldn't bear to turn it up. Every twang of pedal steel guitar conjured Harlan's truck fading into the rain-slicked rearview, his silhouette a receding accusation. They'd crossed the Tennessee line by noon, stopping at a diner off I-40 where the waitress called her sugar, and poured coffee strong enough to strip varnish. Lila woke then, stretching with a yawn that lit her face, oblivious at first to the shadows under Esther's eyes. "You okay?" she asked, fingers brushing Esther's across the sticky tabletop, a touch that grounded like anchor in storm. Esther forced a nod, stirring sugar into her cup until it swirled like the doubts in her chest. Just thinking about the quilt. Mama's wildflowers, they were her rebellion, small as they were. Pressed between pages of Lady's home journal, hidden from Daddy's eyes. She glanced out the window where semis rumbled past under a sky-bruised purple. What if I can't bloom like that? What if the roots I cut leave me barren? Lila's gaze held steady, the chemist's precision in her words. Roots aren't chains, Esther. You prune them to grow. And look, we're free. She squeezed her hand, then released, signaling the waitress for pie. Apple a la mode, the kind that melted sweet on the tongue. They ate in companionable silence, forks clinking like toasts to the unknown. But Esther's mind wandered back to the levee, Harlan's shotgun glinting in the downpour, his voice cracking on abomination. Freedom tasted of tin and ash. By dusk they hit the Ozarks, the land folding into hills that whispered of hidden hollows, much like the secrets Esther still carried. The Serum's grip had faded, but its gift lingered. A compulsion toward candor that made her peel back layers in the dim motel rooms they claimed each night. In Joplin, under fluorescent buzz, she confessed the smaller sins. The time she'd forged her high school diary to please a crush who never returned, the way she'd volunteered at the soup kitchen not from grace but guilt, atoning for the privilege of Whitaker White. Lila listened, tracing patterns on Esther's palm, her own truths emerging in counterpoint. The ex in Oregon who'd gaslit her into believing love was a lab error, the scholarship she'd sabotaged with a bender born of fear. "You're not broken, either of us," Lila said one night in Springfield, their bodies tangled in sheets thin as promises. "We're just recalibrating." Her kiss was slow, exploratory, mapping the terrain of Esther's collarbone, drawing sighs that echoed off cinderblock walls. In those hours Monroe felt like myth, the Serum a catalyst for this alchemy, turning hidden smiles to open hearts. But the road had its ambushes. A wrong turn near Tulsa dumped them into a backwoods revival, tents flapping like sails in the wind, voices rising in hallelujahs laced with hellfire. They parked on the fringe, drawn by curiosity or masochism, Esther's foot tapping the brake as a preacher thundered about Sodom's fall, his finger jabbing the air like judgment. "The devil dresses in silk these days, sisters, tempting our daughters with whispers of the unnatural." The crowd murmured amen, faces flushed with righteous heat, and Esther's stomach twisted, bile rising sharp. Lila's hand found her thigh, steadying. "Drive," she murmured, but Esther lingered, transfixed by a woman in the front row, older, her face a map of quiet descent, nodding along but eyes distant, dreaming of escapes long denied. It could have been Mama, or the aunt who'd vanished to California in '72, leaving only rumors. The Serum stirred faintly, urging words Esther bit back. "I know that fire. I've burned in it." Instead, she gunned the engine, tires spitting gravel, the tent shrinking in the mirror like a bad omen. They reached Portland under a drizzle that felt like absolution, the city's bridges arching like welcoming arms over the Willamette. Lila's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in the Pearl District, walls lined with bookshelves groaning under tomes of organic synthesis and dog-eared Atwood novels, windows fogged with the breath of urban life. "Home," Lila declared, dumping bags in the hall, pulling Esther into a spin that ended in laughter against the fridge. But the word landed heavy, a question mark in Esther's throat. Unpacking became ritual. Esther's few clothes folded neat in drawers scented of cedar, the quilt draped over the bed like a banner of survival. Lila's lab gear migrated to the kitchen table, beakers bubbling with experiments that promised patents, futures. Nights blurred into mornings of coffee and caresses, the serum's echo fading to a hum of authenticity. Esther ventured out, resume in hand, landing a gig at Powell's City of Books. A labyrinth of shelves where stories swallowed her whole. "You fit here," Lila said, watching her shelve Southern Gothic tales, fingers lingering on the spines of O'Connor and Welty. "Like you were always meant to wander off the plantation." Yet the ghosts followed, subtle as fog. A package arrived unmarked, Harlan's handwriting jagged on the label. Faded photos of Mama in her youth, smiling fierce beside a woman with Portland rain in her eyes, the secret love unearthed from attic dust. A note clipped inside. She chose silence. "Don't." Esther wept then, not for loss but release, pinning the photos to the fridge like talismans. Lila cooked gumbo from memory, spices sharp as memory, and they toasted with cheap wine to women who'd loved in shadows. Work brought its own reckonings. At Powell's, Esther met Jules, a barista with a buzzcut and tattoos of intertwined vines. Her flirtations light but pointed. "Southern belle, huh? Bet you've got stories that'd curl these pages." Esther deflected with smiles, but the attention stirred unease. A reminder of the world's gaze, even in progressive haze. One shift, as rain sheeted the windows, Jules leaned close over the espresso machine. "You ever miss the heat down there? Or just the complications?" The serum's ghost flickered, loosening her tongue. "Both," Esther admitted, steam curling between them. "But complications chase you everywhere. Like trying to love without apology." Jules's eyes sharpened, understanding dawning, but before she could press, Lila appeared at the counter, drenched and grinning, 2 tickets to a reading in hand. Audre Lorde, Voices of Fire. The event was a revelation. Women on stage, unbowed, weaving words like spells against erasure. Esther sat rapt, Lila's arm a warm weight around her shoulders, the crowd a tapestry of lives lived loud. Back home, fueled by the night's energy, they made love with a ferocity born of witness. Bodies claiming space, voices murmuring affirmations in the dark. "This is us," Lila gasped, fingers weaving through Esther's hair. "No hiding." But hiding's shadow lengthened. Harlan's silence broke in spring. A call Esther let ring until voicemail captured his rasp. "Fields are green, girl. But empty without you. Come see." Temptation tugged, the pull of blood like bayou current. She booked a flight south solo, telling Lila it was closure, not return. Monroe greeted her with smothering embrace. Air thick with jasmine and judgment. The town square buzzing with whispers of that Whitaker girl and her notions. Harlan waited at the gate, older in khakis pressed crisp, his hug bone-crushing, forgiveness unspoken. The plantation house loomed, sagging under vines, supper a spread of fried chicken and collards that tasted of childhood sins. They talked late, fireflies dancing outside the screen porch. "I sold the back 40, he confessed, nursing bourbon neat, to pay for Mama's headstone, proper one with her real name carved." Esther's breath caught. The stone bore not just Eliza, but a date etched faint, a life half-lived. "She wrote me letters after you left," Harlan continued, voice gravel, "about loving wrong in their eyes. Said you had her fire. Don't quench it." Tears came unbidden. The serum's legacy in full bloom. "I won't," she promised, hand over his. Dawn brought goodbyes soft as moss, the quilt refolded in her lap on the flight west. Portland welcomed her with open skies. Lila at the airport, eyes questioning but trusting. Summer deepened their roots. Community picnics where hands linked without shame. Lila's grant approved for a truth serum antidote, ironic salvation. Esther's first story sold to a lit mag. Words spilling her journey in veiled prose. Yet autumn winds carried Harlan's decline. A fall in the fields, hospital lights harsh as truth. Esther flew south again, Lila beside her this time. Their presence a united front. In the sterile room, Harlan gripped her hand, eyes clear. "Brought the Yankee," he rasped, a ghost of smile. "Good. Life's too short for solo." He passed quiet that night. Fields inherited not in chains but choice. Sold to co-op, legacy redeemed. Grief wove through them like kudzu, but in its tendrils, growth. Back in Portland, under evergreens that whispered welcome, Esther and Lila planted a garden. Wildflowers nodding in the breeze. a testament to blooms from broken soil. The serum, that accidental elixir, had stripped illusions, revealing not just secrets, but the strength to live them. In each other's arms, smiles genuine as dawn, they knew truth wasn't poison, but the seed of becoming. Winter in Portland wrapped the city in a hush of mist and evergreens, the Willamette's waters turning slate gray under skies that wept without apology. Esther and Lila's apartment glowed like a lantern against the gloom, windows steamed from stews simmering on the stove, the air rich with sage and the faint tang of Lila's latest brew. A benign variant of her serum, now refined for therapeutic trials, whispers of clinical partnerships buzzing in her inbox. But for Esther, the season was a reckoning, Harlan's absence a hollow in her chest that echoed with every creak of the floorboards, every unanswered voicemail from Monroe cousins who'd once shared potlucks but now sent condolences laced with distance. She'd scattered his ashes herself, on the bayou's edge where he'd taught her to skip stones, Lila's hand in hers a steady pulse against the wind's keen. He let go, Lila had said, voice muffled in wool scarf, as if absolution could be so simple. But grief was a tide, ebbing to reveal sharp rocks. The deed to the plantation, willed to Esther with a codicil urging freedom over fields. She sold it all, Cotton Rose to a sustainable collective, the house to a historical trust preserving its ghosts for tourists, not tyrants. The check cleared in December, a sum that could anchor them, but Esther felt unmoored, wandering the bookstore aisles like a specter, recommending Pat Conroy to patrons who sensed her drift. You're adrift, Lila noted one evening, curled on the couch with a textbook splayed across her knees, the lamplight carving hollows under her eyes from late nights charting molecular bonds. Talk to me. The serum's ghost or not, let it out. Esther set down her mug, chamomile gone cold, and paced to the window, fog pressing close like old lovers. It's not just Daddy. It's the what if. What if I'd stayed? Married Thaddeus, popped out little Whitakers to till soil that wasn't mine? Would I be whole or just hollow? Her reflection stared back, a woman remade but raw, the southern drawl softened by rain but stubborn in her bones. Lila rose, crossing the room in 3 strides, arms encircling from behind, chin resting on Esther's shoulder. Hollow's what you escaped. This us, it's solid. But if you need to mourn the road not taken, we'll walk it in dreams. Her words were practical poetry, the scientist's mind weaving emotion into equation, and Esther leaned back, letting the warmth seep in. They stood that way until the city lights blurred, a silent pact against the winter's bite. Spring thawed the ice, bringing blooms that mirrored Esther's tentative unfurling. She enrolled in a writing workshop at the local community college, a circle of voices in a converted warehouse, where prompts pulled truths like threads from a loom. Write the forbidden, the instructor urged. A wiry woman named Theo with silver streaks and stories etched in laugh lines. Esther's pen flew. Vignettes of Levy kisses, serum spills, a father's reluctant grace. Peers nodded. One, a trans man named Riley, sharing his own exile from Texas dust. We carry our homes like scars, he said, and Esther felt seen, the workshop a balm to isolation's sting. Lila thrived too, her antidote gaining traction. A compound pitch to clinics for trauma therapy, unlocking without unraveling. Presentations in Seattle, collaborations with psych departments, her days a whirl of whiteboards and wonder. Evenings she returned electric, recounting breakthroughs over takeout pho, her enthusiasm a spark that reignited Esther's own. Imagine, Lila mused one night, chopsticks poised. A world where secrets don't fester, where truth is choice, not curse. But choices had costs. A letter arrived from Monroe, forwarded through lawyers. The church deacons, suing for defamation over rumors Esther's lifestyle, had tarnished the Whitaker pew. It was bluster, baseless, but the wound reopened, class and creed entwined, the South's old vines strangling from afar. Esther crumpled it, hurling the paper into the fire they'd lit against a chill snap, flames devouring ink like absolution. They want to erase me, she spat, voice trembling. Make me the villain in their sainted story. Lila knelt by the hearth, pulling her down, faces close in the fireglow. Then write your own ending. Publish it. Let the world see the woman behind the smile. The idea took root, fertile as Willamette loam, and Esther submitted her workshop pieces to a regional lit journal, heart pounding as the acceptance email pinged weeks later. The Levy's Truth, a semi-autobiographical tale of serum and surrender. Publication brought ripples. Readings at indie bookstores, Q&As where audiences leaned in, hungry for narratives of queer Southern flight. A reviewer in the Oregonian called it a lyrical gut punch, humanizing the heartland's hidden hearts. Lila beamed from the front row at her first event, a converted speakeasy downtown, Esther's voice steady as she read. The truth burned like moonshine, stripping facades to reveal the flesh beneath, tender, terrified, alive. Afterward, over gin and tonics, admirers clustered. A professor with tenure offers, a podcast host sniffing memoir potential. But it was Riley from Workshop, nursing a beer at the bar, who cut deepest. "Proud of you," he said, clinking glasses, "for naming the beast. Mine's still growling. Family cut me off last year. But stories? They bite back." The night ended in their bed, bodies slick with sweat and celebration, Lila's mouth tracing verses on Esther's skin. "You're a force," she murmured, fingers delving deep. "Unstoppable." Esther arched, lost in the rhythm, but dawn brought a shadow. A call from an unknown Louisiana number, a cousin's voice hesitant. "Harlan left a box. For you. Things he wanted you to have before the end." The flight south was solitary again. Lila tied to a conference, but Portland's grip loosened with each mile. Monroe Airport felt smaller, the air heavier, magnolias mocking with their perfume. The cousin Beatrice met her at a Waffle House, hands ringing over pecan waffles. "He changed after you left," she said, eyes downcast. "Started reading books on. Well, folks like you. Said it was time to till new ground." The box waited at the old house, now a museum of sorts, docents nodding polite as Esther claimed it from the attic. Inside, Harlan's journal, pages filled with scrawl, regrets over Mama's silence, pride in Esther's gumption, even a clipped article on Portland's queer scene, edges frayed from handling. "To my girl," the last entry read, "may your truths outshine my silences." She flew back lighter, journal clutched like scripture, sharing passages over dinner with Lila, voices overlapping in the candlelit kitchen. "He saw you," Lila said, tears glinting. "Really saw." Summer swelled with momentum. Esther's book deal for a memoir, Smiles and Serum, agent lunches in lofts overlooking the river. Lila's antidote hit trials, ethics boards nodding approval. They bought a ring, simple gold bands engraved with wildflowers, exchanging vows in a backyard ceremony under oaks imported from a nursery, friends toasting with craft cider. Riley officiated, his words a bridge from scars to stars. But autumn's harvest brought thorns. The church suit dragged on, depositions dredging dirt, witnesses swearing to immoral conduct at the levee, Thaddeus Hargrove testifying with smug piety. "She led good folk astray," he claimed, voice oily in transcript. Esther testified remote, screen glowing cold, her words measured. "I led myself to truth. That's no crime." The judge dismissed it, costs to plaintiffs, but the toll lingered. Sleepless nights where Monroe's judgment echoed in dreams. Lila held her through fevers of doubt, brewing teas and truths. "We're winning," she insisted. "Not just cases but lives." Winter circled back, softer now, snow dusting the garden like forgiveness. Esther's book launched to quiet acclaim, signings where readers whispered thanks. "You voiced my silence." Harlan's journal wove through chapters, a father's redemption arc humanizing the myth. One eve, as flakes fell fat and silent, they walked the waterfront, arms linked, rings catching streetlight. "From Serum to this," Esther mused, breath clouding. "Accident to everything." Lila stopped, turning her to face the bridge's glow. "Not accident. Destiny. You drank truth, we drank each other." Their kiss was snowmelt sweet, the city a witness to their weave, two women, southern root and western rain blooming defiant. Yet in quiet hours Esther pondered the cost. Families fractured, names tarnished but souls salvaged. The serum had been catalyst but choice the compound, their love a reaction yielding light. As years layered like Willamette silt they mentored. Workshops for runaways, Lila's antidote aiding confessions kind. Monroe became pilgrimage, not prison, visits to the collective fields, wildflowers nodding where cotton once choked. In the end, truth wasn't unraveling but rethreading. Stitches stronger for the tear. Esther's smile, once shield, now beacon. Open, unhidden, illuminating paths for those still smiling through storms. The book tour for Smiles and Serum pulled Esther across the map like a migratory bird. From Portland's fog-shrouded readings to Boston's brick-lined halls, each stop a mirror reflecting fragments of her fractured self. In Nashville, a stone's throw from Monroe's shadow, the audience swelled with Southern faces, women in sundresses clutching copies, eyes hungry for heresy. "How do you forgive the unforgiving?" one asked, voice quivering over the bookstore's creak. Esther paused, the weight of Harlan's journal in her tote a talisman. "Forgiveness isn't absolution," she replied, words honed by workshop fires. "It's planting seeds in poisoned soil. Watch them grow anyway." Applause rippled, but backstage in the green room's hush, doubt crept. Had she grown or just grafted wild onto tame? Lila joined midway, her conference schedule syncing in Atlanta, where Magnolia ghosts loomed large. They met at a cafe in Midtown, Lila's flight-delayed grin cutting through Esther's fatigue like dawn. "You're a rock star," she teased, sliding into the booth, hand finding Esther's under the table. A habit now, unthinking as breath. Over sweet tea and shrimp po'-boys they dissected the tour. The queer youth group in Raleigh who'd baked cornbread in welcome. The heckler in Charleston sputtering scripture like bile. "It's stirring the pot," Lila said, eyes alight with the thrill of disruption. "Your words, they're serum for the silent." But Esther saw the strain in her lover's posture. The way Lila's fingers drummed the menu, her own battles mounting, a rival lab poaching her antidote formula, ethics complaints whispering sabotage. Back in their hotel, overlooking Peachtree's neon vein, tension uncoiled in sheets tangled like bayou vines. "I need you," Esther murmured, lips brushing Lila's temple, bodies aligning in the rhythm of reassurance. Lila yielded, then claimed, her touch a map redrawn nightly, but whispers followed. "What if they take it all? The research us." Morning brought clarity and crisis. Lila's phone buzzed at dawn, voicemail from her advisor. "Pull the plug on T17 trials. Leak suggests contamination. Your credibility's on the line." Face paling, she played it again, voice flat as Esther stirred. "It's them, the competitor, framing me to bury the project." Esther sat up, sheets pooling, pulling Lila close. "Fight it. You're the one who turned poison to cure." But the accusation stung deeper, echoing old betrayals. Lila's ex who'd stolen grant ideas before ghosting. "I can't lose this," Lila confessed, tears hot on Esther's shoulder. "It's not just science. It's proof I'm not the mistake they called me." They canceled the day's reading, holing up in the room, laptops glowing like interrogation lamps. Emails flew. To lawyers, colleagues, the leak's anonymous source traced to a Portland IP. Internal betrayal, a junior tech bought off. Rage simmered, but Esther channeled it, drafting a public statement for Lila's blog. "Truth isn't proprietary. It's the air we breathe, stolen at peril." Posted by noon, it went viral in niche circles. Chemists rallying, queer advocates amplifying, a digital levy standoff. The tour resumed fractured, Esther's readings laced with Lila's shadow, absences explained as family matters, audiences sensing the undercurrent. In Richmond, a panel on Southern queer lit turned confessional. "My roommate," Esther shared, voice steady, "drank my secrets first. Now the world's drinking hers." Laughter broke tension, but afterward a fan slipped her a note. "Saw your story in the journal. My daughter's like you, trapped in Baton Rouge. Send her hope." Hope became currency. Back in Portland, the leak scandal crested. Whistleblower exposed, the junior tech confessing to coercion, rival lab fined. Lila's antidote cleared, trials greenlit with fanfare. A press conference where she credited Esther. "Truth serum taught me honesty starts at home." Cameras flashed, but Lila's eyes sought only hers in the crowd. A nod sealing solidarity. Summer deepened, their garden exploding in riot, wildflowers seeding neighbors' plots. A quiet conquest. Esther's memoir climbed charts, foreign rights selling to Paris and Berlin, but fame's glare brought interlopers. A producer sniffing miniseries potential, scripts that sanitized serum to sparkle. "To Hollywood," Esther told Lila over porch wine, crickets chorusing dissent. They want drama without the dirt. Lila laughed, feet in Esther's lap. Let them. We've got our plot. Twists and all. But twists brewed. A call from Beatrice, Harlan's cousin, voice thick with tears. The collective's failing. Drought hit hard. Folks are losing homes. Your home's blood or not. Guilt gnawed, the check from the sale a ghost in their savings. Esther wired aid anonymously at first, then visited, Lila in tow. The bayou baked cracked under merciless sun. Fields once green lay fallow, workers' faces gaunt as old photographs. Whitaker's girl, one elder murmured, clasping her hand. Thought you'd forgotten us. I haven't, Esther replied, throat tight, organizing fundraisers from afar. Readings with proceeds south, Lila's lab donating water purifiers. It was bridge building, fragile but fervent, mending rifts wider than the Mississippi. Fall harvested bounty and betrayal. At a gala for Lila's project, champagne flutes clinking amid pharmasuits, a face from Oregon's past emerged. Mara, the ex, sleek in sequins, toasting Lila's triumph with eyes like daggers. Heard you tamed the wild one, she purred, glancing at Esther. Southern charm suits you. Lila stiffened, but Esther's hand on her elbow steadied. Taming's for horses, she said, cool, drawl honeyed venom. We run free. Mara slunk away, but the encounter festered. Lila withdrawing into late labs. Doubts whispered in dark. What if I'm the leak's real target? My past catching up. Esther confronted it head-on. Over pie at their diner haunt. Past is prologue, not prison. Mara's ghost? Banish it. Vulnerability cracked Lila then, confession spilling. The gaslighting, the theft, the fear she'd repeat patterns. I betrayed myself once. Swore I wouldn't you. You haven't, Esther insisted, fork stabbing crust. Betrayal's choosing chains over us. You're choosing light. Winter whispered resolutions. The drought eased with rains, collective stabilizing. Beatrice's thanks a bomb. Esther's series deal signed. Faithful to grit, Serum unvarnished. They honeymooned in Vermont. Cabins snowbound, bodies and books their world. Faulkner by firelight, love like hearth warmth. Spring bloomed renewal. Lila pregnant via donor. A choice deliberated moons, joy tentative as new leaves. Esther's hand on the swell, feeling kicks like stories stirring. Our truth, she murmured. Growing legs. But summer scorched with trial's fire. The church appealed the dismissal, dredging depositions anew. Thaddeus's affidavits venomous, claiming seduction of innocence. Media sniffed, headlines twisting. Lesbian lit star sued by Bible Belt. Protests erupted, supporters picketing courthouses, but Esther's sleep fractured. Nightmares of levees and lost children. Lila anchored, belly rounding, voice fierce. Fight with words. Yours wound deepest. Esther's op-ed in The Atlantic. Smiles as weapons. Went nuclear, exposing hypocrisy, humanizing Harlan's arc. Public swayed. Appeal crumbled. Deacons settling out of court, silenced. Fall's harvest. A son born under harvest moon, named Ellis for Bayou Bends. Lila's milk, Esther's lullabies, truth in tiny fists. The garden overran, wildflowers seeding streets, a metaphor lived. Years layered, Ellis toddling through tales, asking of the magic drink. It made mommy brave, Esther explained, Lila's wink conspiratorial. Monroe visits became annual, collective thriving. Beatrice auntie to the boy with southern curls. In quiet eaves, rings glinting, they reflected. Serum's accident birthed intention. Love as rebellion, truth as root. Smiles once hidden, now shared. A legacy of light, illuminating shadows for those still searching. Ellis's laughter echoed through the apartment like sunlight fracturing rain. A 2-year-old tornado appending blocks and books with gleeful anarchy. Portland had softened around them, the Pearl District's edges blurring into family rhythms. Lila's lab now a home office hybrid, beakers shelved beside sippy cups, Esther's writing desk scarred with crayon wars. The memoir's afterglow lingered in royalty checks and fan mail, but domesticity's pull was stronger, a tide of tantrums and triumphs that grounded the grand narratives to daily grace. Yet beneath the patina, fissures formed. Lila's postpartum haze stretched, hormones a riptide pulling her under, nights staring at ceilings while Ellis fussed, Esther's arms a harbor but not horizon. I feel unmoored. Lila confessed one dawn, nursing in the rocker, city stirring beyond the blinds. The serum was chaos I controlled. This motherhood, its variables I can't equation. Esther knelt, forehead to Lila's knee, Ellis's tiny hand patting her cheek. You're the constant. We adapt. But adaptation chafed. Esther's second book stalled, pages of Southern elegy turning maudlin, her gaze drifting to Lila's form, changed sacred but shadowed by distance. Intimacy waned to exhaustion's edge, touches functional, kisses clipped by colic cries. Summer brought catalyst. A fellowship in New Orleans, Esther's name on the shortlist for a writer's residency at the Faulkner House, 6 weeks of solitude and swamp song. Go, Lila urged, eyes bright with projected freedom. Write the next chapter. I'll hold the fort. Excitement warred with ache, leaving Ellis's chubby hugs, Lila's quiet strength, but the bayou called, a siren's hum of unfinished business. New Orleans enveloped her like a fever dream, air thick with jazz and jasmine, the residency a shotgun cottage off Esplanade, walls weeping history. Mornings she walked the quarter, beignet dusting her journal as she sketched sequels. Ellis as heir to wildflowers, Lila as alchemist of home. Afternoons bled into prose, typewriter clacking like castanets, words flowing freer than in Portland's rain. But the city stirred ghosts. At a launch party for local lit, she spotted Corinne, aged graceful laugh lines framing eyes that once met hers in cotton gin dark. Esther Whitaker, Corinne breathed, clinking glasses of Sazerac, the crowd a blur of beads and bourbon. Your book gutted me. That levee scene? Us, wasn't it? Truth serum scarred loosened her tongue. Yes. And more, the serum that spilled it all. They talked till closing, Corinne's life a counterpoint. Married to a professor, 2 boys, but weekends in the quarter chasing echoes. I ran to Atlanta, but regret followed, she admitted, hand brushing Esther's arm, electric vestige. You? You burned it down. The flirtation simmered, innocent as absinthe, but guilt gnawed on the flight home. Portland greeted with autumn blaze. Ellis barreling into her legs, Lila's kiss deeper than memory. Missed you, Lila whispered, but Esther's mind replayed Corinne's touch, a betrayal unacted but imagined, the old hunger for what-ifs. Winter deepened the divide. Lila's lab hit snag. Funding cuts, a grant denied for risk profile, whispers of her unconventional family biasing boards. She withdrew further, experiments abandoned for bedtime stories, resentment brewing silent. Esther, sensing the storm, pushed. Date nights at riverside bistros, babysitters for stolen hours. One night, over candlelit cocoa vin, she broached it. We're drifting. Talk to me like the Serum days. Lila's fork stilled, eyes hardening. Serum was accident. This is choice. Yours to leave, mine to stay and sink. The words landed like hail, accusation sharpening. I saw the photos on your phone. New Orleans. Corinne. Old flames die hard, don't they? Esther recoiled, heart slamming. A drink. Words. Nothing more. But the seed of doubt sprouted. Had it been nothing? The pull of shared scars, the ease of old sins. You're projecting your fears, she countered, voice rising. Mara's ghost, not mine. The fight escalated, voices low to spare Ellis's ears, but shards flew. Lila's exhaustion weaponized, Esther's absence's indictment. You chase stories while I chase sleep, Lila hissed. Who betrays who? Doors slammed, couch became bed. Silence a chasm wider than bayous. Spring thawed ice but not hearts. Therapy sessions via Zoom. A counselor named Dana with Vermont calm. Unpacking patterns. Esther's flight to freedom, Lila's anchor and control. Betrayal starts inward, Dana said. Face your own shadows. Esther journaled furiously, Corinne as mirror not magnet, while Lila rebuilt lab models, molecules a metaphor for mending. Reconciliation came gradual, like dawn over Delta. A weekend getaway to the coast, Ellis with Beatrice in Monroe, waves crashing as they walked Cannon Beach, hands tentative then tight. I feared losing you to the past, Lila admitted, sand shifting underfoot. But the real loss is now if we don't choose. Esther stopped, facing the tide's roar. I choose us. Every complication. Their kiss tasted of salt and renewal. bodies reclaiming under haystack rock, love fierce as undertow. Summer healed Ellis's third birthday, a riot of cake and coast. Family photos framed on mantles, wildflowers in his curls. Lila's grant renewed, a queerlet foundation championing her work. Esther finished the novel, dedicating to the alchemist who turned my poison gold. But fall's equinox brought Harlan's echo. A letter from the collective, drought scars lingering, requesting Esther's voice for a fundraiser. The Whitaker legacy, from chains to change. She headlined, Portland to Monroe, Lila and Ellis in tow. Stage lights hot as confession. My father tilled soil soaked in silence, she read, voice steady. Now we plant truths. Crowd wept, donations flowed, but backstage Thaddeus lurked. Thinned by years, eyes bitter. Still peddling lies, he sneered. Your kind ruins good folk. Lila stepped forward, Ellis on hip. Our kind builds. Yours just builds walls. Security ushered him out, but the venom lingered, a reminder of battles unending. Winter wrapped them close, holidays hybrid. Portland tree trimmed southern. Gumbo with gingerbread. Ellis's questions multiplied. Why no Grandpa Harlan? Answered in stories softened for small ears. He learned to love big, Esther said, Lila's nod affirming. Spring's bloom carried surprise. Lila's positive test, another child brewing. Joy tempered caution, bodies mindful, but love deepened, a wellspring. Esther's novel launched to acclaim. Tours truncated for nursery prep. Yet summer scorched with sabotage. Anonymous emails to Lila's funder. Unstable home. Risky principal. Investigations traced to Thaddeus, grudge eternal. Lawsuits flew but victory swift. Restraining order, public shaming in AG rags. Fall harvested twins news. Family swelling like garden. Monroe ties strengthen. Beatrice visiting with pralines and pride. Ellis schooled in wildflowers, truths tender. In quiet nights, nursing swells they reflected. Betrayal's blade dulled by choice. Serum's legacy and laughter's light. Smiles shared and scarred wove their tapestry, human, haunting, whole. The twins arrived with autumn's fury. A boy and girl born under harvest storm. Cries harmonizing like jazz off the bayou. Portland's hospital hummed with their arrival. Lila exhausted, radiant. Esther cutting cords with hands steady as her father's once were on plow. They named them River and Sage, evoking Willamette flow and wild herb resilience. Tiny fists waving like flags of new frontiers. Ellis, wide-eyed big brother at 4. Poked fingers gentle, whispering babies as if spell. Homecoming blurred in newborn haze. Bottles warmed at odd hours. Lila's body a battlefield of beauty and ache. Esther juggling manuscripts with midnight feeds. The apartment, once echoey, pulsed with life. Cribs crowding corners. Laughter layering over old laments. We're a herd, Lila quipped one dawn, sage-latched content. River fussing in Esther's arms. Chaos I choose. But choices weight-pressed. Esther's novel tour ramped. Coasts calling while Lila anchored hearth. Grant deadlines looming amid diapers. Go, Lila insisted again, eyes shadowed but sure. The words need wings. Esther flew east, readings in New York lofts and DC salons. Audiences dissecting her prose. That betrayal scene, the roommate's doubt. It's raw as revelation. Raw indeed. Back west, distance bred discord anew. Lila's emails sharpened. Ellis asked why you're gone again. River spit up on my proposal. Guilt nod, Esther cutting stopped short, returning to chaos. Lila frayed, snapping over spilled milk. Esther's suitcase a symbol of flight. You're half here, Lila accused one night. Twins asleep. Ellis abed with stories untold. Chasing acclaim while we chase tales. Esther's retort bit. And you're chaining yourself to sinks and schedules. The serum freed us. Don't build bars now. Words hung toxic. A relapse to early fights, betrayal's specter in every sigh. Therapy reignited. Dana's virtual couch a lifeline. Patterns persist, she noted, voice even. Esther, your mobility masks fear of stasis. Lila, control cloaks vulnerability. Homework, date jars, slips of promises. Walk by the river. Read aloud from Welty. Drawn nightly, enforcing presence. Winter wove mending. Holidays swelled with siblings, Beatrice flying north. Pralines melting in snow. Tales of Monroe's revival. Collective co-op thriving wildflowers in fields once fallow. Your daddy'd be proud, Beatrice said, bouncing river eyes misty. Seeing you whole. Pride mingled with pang. A package followed. Thaddeus's obituary, clipped from the Monroe Gazette, heart attack at 65 alone in his manse. No note but implication clear. Grudges end in graves. Esther burned it in the sink, ashes swirling to drain like absolution. One less ghost, she told Lila, arms encircling from behind. Spring quickened with growth. Lila's antidote FDA-bound, panels praising her innovative integrity. Esther mentored at the workshop, Riley now adjunct, their circle expanding. Queer parents swapping survival scrolls. Ellis started preschool, finger paints of families 4 strong, colors bleeding joyful. But summer's heat cracked foundations. A storm literal and lit hit. Lila's lab flooded in a freak Willamette swell. Prototypes lost, data salvaged slim. Insurance balked, funders wavered. Her voice on calls edged steel. It's sabotage, she fumed, pacing kitchen slick with rain. Or fate's cruel joke. Esther rallied. Crowdfunding launched via her platform. Readers donating for the serum that sets stories free. It surged, strangers moved by their arc. Southern flight to Family Forge. Lila wept reading comments. Your truth healed my silence. Fall's equinox brought Ellis's questions deeper. Why no daddies like friends? Conversation circled fire pit. Marshmallows toasting slow. Families bloom different, Esther explained, Lila adding. Like wildflowers, strong in their way. He nodded, content, but the query lingered, seeding talks of donors' legacies. Winter deepened bonds. Twins crawling chaos, Esther's third book brewing. Fictional kin to their kin, tales of Bayou-born beloveds. Lila's trials resumed, a breakthrough in dosing. Gentle truths, she called it. For therapy gentle as their nights. Bodies rediscovering, slow dances in dim kitchens. Spring's renewal carried risk. Invitation to Monroe's Heritage Fest, Esther as keynote. From plantation to page. Lila demurred, twins too young, but Esther went solo, Ellis in tow, stage under oaks dripping moss. Truth isn't theft, she proclaimed, boy on hip. It's inheritance, wild, unowned. Crowd, farmers, former foes, applauded tentative, a deacon nodding from back. After Beatrice hosted gumbo, collective hands clasped hers. You gave us roots anew. Ellis chased fireflies free where she'd once feared, and Esther felt Harlan's gaze, approving at peace. Summer scorched with success. Lila's antidote approved, clinics queuing, her TED Talk viral, accidental honesty, the chemistry of courage. Esther's book deal for Family Saga, tours family inclusive, twins gurgling at signings. But autumn's leaf fall whispered warning. An email from Corinne. In Portland for conference. Coffee. Old times sake. Temptation tugged but Esther deleted, forwarding to Lila, transparency's vow. Ghosts stay buried, she said over wine. We dig forward. Winter closed the circle. A fourth child? No balance found in 3, plus the one growing in stories. Holidays hybrid. Portland lights. Monroe moss, Beatrice's tales bridging. Ellis's school play, wildflowers triumphing weeds, drew tears pride. In quiet eves cradling babes they marveled. Serum spill, a universe unfolding. Betrayals burned to ash, truths to timber. Smiles multiplied in children's faces, echoed the one Esther once hid. Now legion lighting legacies unbound.